Can I play for food? The soft, trembling voice of a 12-year-old girl echoed through the grand lobby of the Continental Hotel. Her question cut through the air like a sharp knife, silencing the crowd of rich guests sipping champagne and laughing under the golden chandeliers. Every head turned toward the doorway. There she stood, a small black girl with big, hopeful eyes, staring at the shiny grand piano in the center of the room. Her clothes were plain and slightly too big for her, and she hugged an old backpack tightly against her chest, as if it were the only thing keeping her safe. Who let her in here? A blonde woman whispered, clutching her glass. Where's security? The event was a charity gala, meant to raise money for underprivileged children, the very kind of child now standing in front of them. But no one saw the irony. Amelia Washington had spent the last week sleeping in shelters, sometimes on benches, sometimes on cold floors. She had passed by the hotel earlier that day, and when she heard music from inside, something in her heart told her to walk in. Victoria Sterling, the elegant event organizer, approached her with a cold smile. She was the kind of woman who was used to being admired, rich, confident, and convinced she was better than everyone else. My dear, she said in a sweet but cutting tone, this isn't the place for you. There's a McDonald's nearby. I just wanted to play, Amelia replied softly, her voice trembling but brave. Just one song. For a plate of food. A ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. She thinks she can play the piano. A man chuckled. She probably doesn't even know which key is C, said another guest, smirking. How cute, added a woman. Kids these days think they can do anything after watching a movie. But Amelia didn't lower her head. She stood still, her small shoulders straight, her eyes calm. There was something different about her, a quiet dignity, a strength that didn't match her age or her situation. In the back of the room, Dr. Robert Chen, a respected pianist and competition judge, watched carefully. He noticed how Amelia looked at the piano, not with curiosity, but with deep familiarity. He had seen that look before. In real musicians. He leaned toward Victoria. Maybe we should let her play, he suggested gently. After all, this event is supposed to help young talent, isn't it? Victoria laughed, a cruel, crystal-clear sound. Oh, Robert, she said mockingly. Be serious. Children like that don't learn music. It's impossible. What none of them knew was that Amelia had grown up surrounded by music. Her grandmother, Betty, was a talented pianist who never got the recognition she deserved because of the color of her skin. She had taught Amelia everything before she passed away. And even after losing her and ending up in foster care, Amelia carried her grandmother's lessons deep in her heart. As the crowd mocked her, Amelia stood there, silently moving her fingers in the air as if she were playing an invisible piano. It was a habit she used to calm herself whenever life got too hard. If you're enjoying this story of courage and justice, make sure to subscribe, because what's about to happen next will silence every voice of prejudice in that room and prove that real talent knows no boundaries. Victoria crossed her arms dramatically. Fine, she said. Since you insist so much, let's make a little deal. The crowd gathered closer, sensing a show. First, Victoria continued, raising one manicured finger. You'll play only one song, and we'll choose it. Second, if you somehow play it decently, I'll pay for your dinner myself. But, she paused with a cruel smile, if you fail, and we all know you will, you must leave immediately and never come back here again. A few guests gasped softly, but most just laughed. Amelia's eyes stayed locked on the piano. In her mind, she heard her grandmother's gentle voice again. When people try to bring you down, let the music speak for you, my dear. Music never lies. I accept, Amelia said firmly. Dr. Chen's eyes widened. In 3 decades of teaching and judging pianists, he had developed a special instinct, and something told him this little girl was not ordinary at all. Something about this little girl made Dr. Chun's instincts come alive. He couldn't explain it, but he felt there was something special here. "Perfect," Victoria said with a smug smile, clapping her hands. "Now, let's pick the song." She looked around the room, searching for a piece that would embarrass the girl as much as possible. Her eyes landed on James Morrison, a bar pianist known more for his arrogance than his talent. "James, dear," she called sweetly, "what do you think our young musician should play?" James grinned, enjoying the game. "How about Beethoven SFR Elise?" he suggested. The crowd laughed immediately. Everyone who had ever touched a piano knew Far, Elise, and most had failed miserably trying to play it. It sounded simple, but to play it well required real skill, control, and years of practice. It was the perfect trap. If the girl only knew a little, she would stumble. If she knew nothing, she wouldn't even start. Excellent choice. Victoria clapped. A song every child knows. No excuses if she fails. Amelia simply nodded and walked toward the piano. Each step she took was calm, steady, but filled with quiet determination. A few guests at the back began to shift uncomfortably. Something about her presence didn't feel right for a child being mocked. She wasn't scared. She carried herself with a kind of grace that only comes from deep strength. When Amelia sat down at the bench, she adjusted the seat carefully, just the way trained pianists do. Dr. Chen noticed instantly and felt a shiver run down his spine. Those weren't the movements of a beginner. "Look at that," Victoria whispered mockingly to her friends. "She doesn't even know how to sit." Poor thing's probably never touched a real piano before. But Dr. Chen saw the truth. Her posture was perfect. The way she lifted her hands, the calm focus in her expression, the perfect curve of her fingers above the keys. Those details could only come from years of discipline and real instruction. Amelia's mind filled with memories of her grandmother, Betty Washington, one of the first black women to try entering the city's music conservatory back in the 1960s. Betty was a gifted pianist, but racism kept her from ever getting the chance she deserved. So, she poured her talent into teaching local children from her home, turning her old piano into a world of endless sound and hope. "Music is a universal language, Amelia," Betty used to say softly. "When you play with your heart, people listen with their souls, not their eyes." Those words echoed in Amelia's heart now. She had spent countless hours practicing beside her grandmother, learning not just notes and rhythm, but emotion, expression, and soul. After losing her and being thrown into foster care, music became the only piece of her old life she could hold on to. Something she played in her imagination on nights when the world felt cold and lonely. "We're waiting," Victoria said impatiently, tapping her long nails on the table. "Or have you already given up?" Amelia took a deep breath and gently placed her hands on the keys. The moment her fingers touched them, a spark ran through her whole body. It had been months since she'd played a real piano, but the feeling was like coming home. Then the first note. It rang out pure and clear, echoing through the entire hall. People turned their heads instantly. It wasn't the clumsy sound they expected from a poor child. It was confident, powerful, real. Dr. Chen stepped closer. He recognized the perfect touch, the control, the timing, things that only come from serious training. This was no coincidence. This was mastery. Victoria tried to laugh it off. "Probably luck," she muttered, but her voice shook slightly. Then Amelia began the main melody of Fr Elise, and the room changed. Every note was flawless, smooth, emotional. She played not like a child, but like someone who had lived a lifetime through music. The tempo, The pauses, the emotion, every part of her performance told a story words could never express. Soon, no one in the room was moving. Glasses were frozen in mid-air. Conversation stopped. Even the waiters stood still. All eyes were fixed on the small girl at the piano, her fingers dancing effortlessly across the keys, filling the air with something pure and breathtaking. Victoria felt her stomach twist. This was not how she planned things. What was meant to be public humiliation was turning into something extraordinary, something she could no longer control. As Amelia played, completely lost in the melody that poured straight from her soul, one question echoed silently in everyone's mind. Who was this girl? And what story was her music trying to tell? As she reached the most difficult passages of Fr. Elise, Dr. Chen could feel his heart racing, because deep down, he already knew. This was not just talent. This was genius. For 40 years, Dr. Robert Chen had studied and judged musical talent. He had seen hundreds of gifted students. But what he was witnessing now went far beyond anything he had ever imagined. This wasn't just good technique. It was extraordinary. The complex descending arpeggios that challenged even advanced players flowed from Amelia's fingers like water, clear, smooth, and full of life. Every note had emotion. Every pause felt alive. She pressed the pedal with the perfect control of a professional concert pianist. "This is impossible," Dr. Chen whispered, stepping closer in disbelief. Victoria, meanwhile, could sense something changing in the room. The chatter had stopped completely. Waiters had frozen in place, trays still in their hands. No one moved. Everyone was spellbound by the music that now filled the grand hall like a dream. "She must have memorized it from YouTube," Victoria said loudly, trying to sound confident. "Kids copy things from the internet all the time." But her voice trembled, and everyone could hear it. What Amelia was doing wasn't imitation, it was real. The emotion, the depth, the flow, this was the work of someone who felt the music, not just learned it. Dr. Chen had seen child prodigies before, little kids who could play Mozart or Chopin flawlessly. But Amelia was different. Her technique was perfect, yes, but there was also maturity, grace, an understanding in her performance that usually took decades to master. As the song reached its powerful middle section, Amelia's fingers flew across the keys with precision and confidence. Her hands moved like they belonged to the piano itself. It was obvious this was not luck. This was years of love, practice, and connection. Memories flowed through her as she played. She could almost hear her grandmother, Betty's gentle voice again. "Music isn't about hitting the right notes, my dear. It's about telling your story, the one only you can tell." Betty Washington had been more than just a piano teacher. She had been a visionary. Born in 1940, she grew up in a world that refused to accept black pianists into top conservatories and orchestras. But instead of giving up, she opened her own home to children in the community. In that small house stood an old upright piano, scratched, worn, but full of dreams. There, she taught the children that classical music belonged to everyone. "The world will try to tell you that some things aren't meant for people like us," Betty would say softly, adjusting Amelia's posture. "But music doesn't care about color or wealth. It only cares about truth." For 8 years, Amelia learned not just the notes, but the soul of music. Betty taught her that every composer had their own story. Chopin spoke of longing, Beethoven of struggle and triumph, Mozart of light and joy. And Betty taught her one more lesson, that Amelia's own story mattered too. When Betty passed away suddenly, Amelia lost not only her grandmother, but the entire world that gave her life meaning. The foster care system took her away from her home, her piano, and her music. For 4 long years, she could only play in her imagination. her fingers moving across invisible keys during lonely nights in shelters. But now, inside the elegant hall of the Continental Hotel, it all came rushing back. Every lesson, every correction, every loving word from Betty flowed through her hands as if no time had passed at all. Dr. Chen stood frozen, his heart pounding as Amelia reached the final section of Fr. Elise. Her control was astonishing. She began the ending softly, building slowly until the notes burst into a powerful, emotional climax before fading again into a gentle whisper. He turned to a piano professor standing beside him. "Please tell me you're seeing this too," he whispered. "This child isn't just talented, she's a phenomenon." Victoria, meanwhile, felt her confidence crumble. Her carefully planned humiliation had turned into a nightmare. Instead of proving that the girl didn't belong there, Amelia was forcing everyone to question their own assumptions about class, race, and talent. "It has to be some kind of trick," Victoria muttered to her friends. "No one learns piano like that without expensive training." But even she didn't believe her own words. What Amelia was showing them couldn't be bought with money. It came from something much deeper, from struggle, from love, from pain, from life itself. Finally, Amelia played the last delicate notes of Fr. Elise. The sound hung in the air like a memory too beautiful to fade. When the final echo vanished into silence, she kept her hands hovering above the keys, as if she didn't want to break the connection between her soul and the instrument. Then slowly, she turned to face the audience. And in that moment, the shy girl who had walked in asking for food was gone. What stood before them was something entirely different. A young artist who had just reminded an entire room of what real greatness looks like. In that moment, silence filled the grand hall. The crowd had expected to see a poor child humiliated, but instead, in Amelia's place sat a young artist who had just spoken the language of the soul. Music. Dr. Chen was the first to react. He slowly brought his hands together in applause that echoed, softly like distant thunder. One by one, the others joined him until the whole Continental Hotel was filled with applause, not polite, but real. Victoria's smile faded. Her plan to embarrass the girl had completely backfired. Now, instead of shame, Amelia had earned admiration. And as Victoria looked round, she saw something terrifying in people's eyes, a question that haunted her. If we were so wrong about this girl, what else might we be wrong about? Amelia stayed seated at the piano, calm and still, letting the applause wash over her like gentle rain after years of drought. But inside her, something powerful was growing. Not pride, but understanding. She finally realized what her music could do, and how powerful her voice truly was. Dr. Chen slowly walked up to her, his expression a mix of curiosity and respect. "My dear," he said softly, "may I ask, where did you study? Your teacher must be incredible." Amelia looked up, her eyes reflecting years of pain and strength. "My grandmother taught me," she said simply. "She told me that music was the one thing no one could ever take away." Dr. Chen froze. That answer hit him like lightning. Her grandmother, not a fancy academy. Family love, not privilege. Pure talent, not money. Everything he thought he knew about greatness was being rewritten by a 12-year-old girl. As the room filled with uneasy admiration, Amelia knew she had crossed a line. She could no longer hide behind the image of a poor, lost child. Her music had revealed the truth. Now everyone wanted to know who she really was. Dr. Chen took another step forward, his voice trembling. "Young lady," he said, "what is your full name?" "Amelia Washington," she answered calmly. The name struck him like a thunderbolt. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Washington, Betty Washington, are you her granddaughter?" Amelia nodded silently. Dr. Chen covered his face with his hands. "My God," he whispered. Betty Washington was one of the greatest pianists this country has ever known. She should have been world famous, but she was kept out because of her color. Victoria looked confused. "Robert, who is Betty Washington?" she asked sharply. Dr. Chen turned to her, his face filled with disbelief. "Victoria, Betty Washington was a legend, a brilliant pianist who was never allowed into elite music halls because she was black instead. She became one of the best private teachers in America. Dozens of professional musicians owe their careers to her." A soft murmur spread across the room as people recognized the name. "But that was years ago," Victoria said defensively. "And even if your story is true, this girl is still a homeless beggar who crashed a private event." Amelia slowly stood from the piano bench. For the first time, her real self emerged, confident, graceful, and proud. The shy child was gone. In her place stood someone who carried generations of strength. "Miss Sterling," Amelia said clearly, "you're right about one thing. I shouldn't be here tonight." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I should be in New York, preparing for my recital at Carnegie Hall next week." The room went silent. Victoria's face turned pale. "My name," Amelia continued, "is Amelia Washington. I'm the youngest pianist ever accepted into Juilliard's Young Artists program, and the current national champion for classical piano under 15. Gasps rippled through the crowd. "The reason I'm here tonight," she added, "is not because I need food or money." Dr. Chen's eyes widened as he began to understand. "The documentary," he whispered. "You're making the documentary?" Amelia nodded. "Yes, I'm working with PBS on a documentary about prejudice and access to the arts. My producer asked me to attend charity events like this, disguised as a poor girl, to see how privileged people treat those they look down on." The truth hit the room like an explosion. Victoria froze. The color drained from her face. "Wait, you're filming us?" she stammered. Amelia nodded calmly. "Yes, hidden cameras, high definition, audio and video. Everything that happened here tonight has been recorded for national broadcast." The guests gasped. Victoria's eyes darted around the room, searching for cameras, for any sign that this was a joke. "That's illegal. You can't record people without permission," she snapped. Dr. Chen stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "Actually, everyone here gave permission. It's written on your tickets. The fine print says the event could be filmed for documentary purposes." He gave a small, knowing smile. "I suppose no one bothered to read it." The room erupted into whispers. People pulled out their phones, checking their tickets in panic. The air was thick with fear. Amelia continued, her voice steady. "The first part of the documentary will show how talent is ignored when it doesn't fit society's idea of privilege. The second part will reveal how people who claim to support the arts react when real talent comes from unexpected places." "I didn't create fake moments tonight," she said softly. "I just showed who you really are when you think no one's watching." Dr. Chen approached her respectfully. "What will you do with the footage?" he asked. "The full documentary airs nationwide next month," Amelia explained, "but I also post shorter clips on my YouTube channel. My last video, filmed at a charity event in Boston, already has over 2.5 million views." The crowd turned to Victoria, who stood frozen in shock. She finally understood her cruelty would soon be seen by millions. Her name, her face, her words, all recorded forever. "Mrs. Sterling," Amelia said firmly, "you spent the whole night telling me that people like me don't belong here, that we have no worth, no talent, no right to be part of this world." Her voice grew stronger, echoing across the silent hall. "Tomorrow, the world will see exactly who you are." Victoria tried to speak, but no sound came out. She could only stand there, trembling, as the weight of her actions sank in. Dr. Chen looked around at the pale faces of the guests. "How many of these events have you filmed?" he asked quietly. "This is the 12th, Amelia replied. "And every time, it's the same story. People who say they love art and equality but instantly judge others by how they look." She turned back to Victoria one last time. "The difference between you and me, Mrs. Sterling," Amelia said gently, "is that when I really was homeless after my grandmother died, I learned something you never did. Dignity doesn't come from money or status. It comes from how we treat people when we think no one is watching." The room fell into a heavy silence. Everyone knew their actions tonight would be judged by millions, and most of them knew they had no defense. Amelia quietly packed her recording device into her backpack and walked toward the exit, leaving behind a hall full of stunned silence and a single haunting question. How many others, like Victoria, would learn too late who she really was? 6 months later, Victoria Sterling stood at the window of her small apartment, watching as a limousine pulled up outside Carnegie Hall. From it stepped Amelia Washington, elegant, radiant, waving to cheering fans before walking inside to perform as the youngest soloist of the season. The documentary Faces of Discrimination had gone viral, over 15 million views on YouTube alone. Victoria had become the face of elitist hypocrisy. She lost her position in every charity group, her luxury clients, and the reputation she had spent years building. Newspapers ran the headline for weeks. Charity organizer exposed for prejudice in viral documentary. Now she worked quietly as an assistant at a small law firm, trying to rebuild a name that might never recover. Meanwhile, Dr. Chen had become Amelia's mentor, guiding her into the professional world of classical music. The Continental Hotel, ashamed of its role, started a new scholarship program for underprivileged young musicians and named Amelia as its ambassador. "Music doesn't care about color, wealth, or address," Amelia said in her first national interview. "It only understands truth and passion. And when you have both, no barrier can hold you back." The impact of the documentary went far beyond entertainment. Music schools opened their doors to low-income students. Conservatories changed their admission policies, and hundreds of talented kids finally got the chances they had always deserved. As Victoria watched Amelia shine in the place she had once tried to keep her out of, she finally understood the hardest lesson of her life. Dignity and talent can't be bought, inherited, or measured by status or skin color. Amelia's greatest revenge was not destroying Victoria. It was proving that true greatness rises above hate, and that sometimes the people we underestimate are the ones who change the world. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories of resilience, truth, and hope, where real greatness always finds its way. No matter how many walls stand in its path,